The Muslims will tell you they believe in one God. They believe that shirk or anything associating with God is an unforgivable sin. There are several verses in the Quran to support this. For example, chapter 112, verse 1 reads, Qul hu Allahu ahad. That means say, Allah is one. But in reality, if you do some neutral researches into the verses of the Quran, you will find contradictory statements for which Muslims are now confused about their monotheist belief. In practice, they believe emulating and copying Muhammad would tantamount to following God's instructions, even to Muhammad's personal choices. For example, how Muhammad used to eat, how he used to sleep, how he used to brush his teeth. Everything would count as blessings from Allah. In fact, without realizing it, Islamic theology has forced and obliged Muslims to forsake their own liberty and become slaves of so-called Prophet Muhammad. Let's investigate some verses. There are several verses in the Quran where Allah calls humans His slaves. For example, chapter 2, verse 23, chapter 2, verse 90, chapter 2, verse 177, and so on. But I believe that Islam rather follows the God-man concept when it comes to Muhammad. I'm sure if you are a Christian theologian, you would know what God-man concept is, which developed in Alexandria in the 3rd century under the church father Origen. Islam is no exception. In reality, Islam believes in two gods, one in belief but other in practice. Muhammad is God in human form. Chapter 4, verse 59 reads, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, atiu Allah, atiu Rasul, which means, O you who believed, obey Allah and obey the messenger. But the question comes, how much emphasis do you give when it comes to obeying Allah and Muhammad? If you follow, obey Muhammad's instructions as if everything that he says, everything that he instructs, everything that he does, you take it as sunnah, but in reality this sunnah is equivalent to obeying as if God walking on the face of the earth. If you become his slave, then obviously it will prove beyond doubt that Islam obeys Muhammad as man God or God reincarnate. Again, if you read chapter 33, verse 36, it reads, وَمَا كَانَ لِئْمِنِيُّ وَلَا مُمِنَةٍ إِذَا كَزَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُ أَمْرًا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخَيْرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا مُبِينًا. Which means, it is not for a believing man or a believing woman when Allah and His Messenger have decided a matter that they should thereafter have any choice about their affair. And whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger has certainly strayed into clear error. So, Muhammad carries the same power and authority when it comes to having command over his follower. He is on the same pedestal with Allah. Again, chapter 39, verse 40 reads, Qul, that means say, قل يا عبادي الذين آمنوا اتقوا ربكم إلا الذين أحسنوا في هذه الدنيا حسنة وأرض الله واسعة إنما يوفى الصابرون أجرهم بغير حساب. That means, say, Allah is commanding Muhammad to say, O my servants who have believed, fear your Lord, for those who do good in this world is good, and the earth of Allah is spacious. Indeed, the patient will be given their reward without account. So here Allah is clearly commanding the Prophet to address his followers as servants or slaves, because the word abd is the root word behind the verse. When it reads, Qul ya ibadil lazina, there should be no question about it. Then again, let's move on. In the same chapter, 39, verse 53 reads, Qul ya ibadil lazina asfaru ala. So this word, ibadil lazina, has the root word abd, or slave. Not even servant, slave. So Muhammad is being instructed, or the Prophet is being instructed by God to address his followers as slaves. So if you're not a hypocrite, if you don't play with words, if you don't engage mental gymnastics, clearly Allah is instructing his Prophet to address his followers as slaves. And again, in chapter 69, verse 40, it reads that it is indeed the speech of a noble prophet. Mark the word qawlu, that means words. Some of the scholars will try to tell you that here the Rasul means Gabriel, which is not true. Because if you read the whole chapter, obviously, unless you are engaging mental gymnastics, by no means you can say that this is referring to Gabriel, because Gabriel is not even mentioned here. That's why you see Muslims are trying to copy every action of Muhammad to seek blessings from God. In fact, Muslims worship Muhammad in the name of worshipping Allah. Even if apologetic Muslims engage mental gymnastics and they refer it to other verses, at least we can say Quran is so much full of contradictory verses that the idea of a monotheist religion cannot be established in Islam unquestionably. Muslim scholars throughout the centuries have tried to deal with this matter and tried to divide Muhammad's works in classifications. For example, wajib, mustahab, and all that. Or even tried to emphasize that some of his instructions will carry more weight if it is qawli, or said words, or if it is takriri, or he did something or failure, or he remained silent. That means silent amount of acceptance in that manner. But when you really dig deeper into Islamic theology, you will see the Muslims will tell you that when they pray, certain actions are considered fard and certain actions are considered sunnah. Even the fard actions or mandatory actions are actions which were instructed by Muhammad, not by Allah, when it comes to what to say during prayer. Those prayers or those instructions you will hardly find even in Quran. So in reality, Muslims hardly delve deeper into Quran. They memorize the Quran, but in reality, they try to follow Muhammad in every action, and they in fact follow hadiths, the sayings, the instructions, and the life of Muhammad in every possible manner. So, Muhammad and Allah are interchangeable gods in reality and practice. in Islam. The worship of Muhammad and his status as a demigod can easily be proven from other Islamic sources, including the Hadiths. I'll give you some examples. Muhammad's hair. Anis ibn Malik narrates that I saw the Messenger of Allah while the barber was shaving his head, and his companions were circling around him, ensuring that a single hair would not fall except into the hands of one of them. Sahih Muslim. And there are other examples. Muhammad's urine. Hafiz Abu Yala stated that Muhammad bin Abu Bakr al-Muqaddami related to him, quoting Salim bin Qutayba from al-Husayn bin Hurayat, from Yalab Ata, from al-Walid bin Abdurrahman, from Ayman, who said, the Messenger of God had a pottery bowl into which he had urinated. When morning came, he would call out, Ayman, pour out the contents of the pot. One night I got up feeling thirsty and drank what it contained. And when the Messenger of God called out, Ayman, pour out the contents of the pot, I replied, Messenger of God, I got up feeling thirsty and drank what was in it. He commanded, you will never suffer from your stomach. It is narrated in Al-Sirah al-Nawiyah by Ibn Kathir, page number 462. And again, Muhammad's blood. Malik bin Sanan, on the day of Uhud battle, drank and sucked the blood of the Prophet. And therein the Prophet permitted him and said, you will be spared from the hellfire. Ash-Shifa al-Qadi Yad by Abdul Rauf Hibah. Then Muhammad's feces. Abu Bakr bin Sabiq al-Malik narrated, both statements assumed by people of profound knowledge. As for that in his book Al-Badi, in the branches of Al-Malikiyah, and scrutinized that, in relation to their Shafi school of jurisprudence, he concluded and explained, he, that means the Prophet, never exerted anything bad or unpleasant. Ash-Shifa by Al-Qadi Yad by Kihan Abdul Rauf Hibah, page 79. Then again, Muhammad's feces was automatically swallowed by earth. Then Muhammad's fem. Muhammad's fem was used as a face and body lotion. Sahih Bukhari, hadith number 2731 and 2732. Urwa then stated, looking at the companions of the Prophet, by Allah, whenever Allah's messenger spat, the spittle would fall in the hand of one of them, that means one of the companions, who would rub it on his face and his skin. If he ordered them, they would carry his orders immediately. If he performed ablution, they would struggle to take the remaining water. Muhammad's fem was used as face and body lotion. Urwa began looking at the companions of the Prophet. By God, he said, if the Prophet coughs up a bit of fem and it falls into the hands of one of them, he rubs his face and his skin with it. The History of Al-Tabari, page 77. Muhammad's spit. Muhammad's saliva provided nutrition and solace to the babies. The grandsons of Muhammad al-Hassan and al-Hussein were young and crying on account of thirst. Muhammad gave them his tongue to suck, and thereafter they stopped crying. Ash-Shifa by Qadi Iyad, page number 194. Then again, on one day, Abu Huraira accompanies Muhammad to the mosque. Once there, Muhammad said, "Where is the little one? Call the little one to me." Hassan came running and jumped into his lap. Then he put his hand in his beard. Then Muhammad opened his mouth and put his tongue in his mouth. Then he said, "O Allah, I love him, so love him and the one who loves him." Al-Abad al-Mufrad al-Bukhari. The hadith is classified as Hasan. Then Muhammad's sweat. Muhammad's sweat was the most fragrant perfume. Sahih Muslim, hadith number 2331. Then again, Anas bin Malik reported that Allah's apostle used to come out to our house and there was perspiration upon his body. My mother bought a bottle and began to pour the sweat in that. When Allah's apostle got up, he said, Sulaim, what is this that you are doing? Thereupon she said, that is your sweat, which we mix in our perfume, and it becomes the most fragrant perfume. Also, in Ash-Shifa Qadi by Graham Abdul Rauf Habib, Hiba, page number 78. And then Muhammad's sweat was collected by his followers and used as perfume. Sahih Muslim, hadith number 2331, B, 2331, C. Then Muhammad's mole smelled like musk. Al-Muzni al-Harbi narrated on the authority of Zabir, the Prophet made me stand behind him, and thereupon I touched the mole protuberance of the Prophet by my mouth, and then it overwhelmed me, and the fragrance of musk. So all these narrations prove that even during the time of Muhammad, all his followers and companions considered him a demigod. Whatever instructions he was giving, they were following him blindly. Even his silence accounted as acceptance. His every step was considered to be emulated as blessings, and even his body was considered divine. So though Muslims claim that they worship only Allah, and there are verses where you will find in Quran, it is said Muhammad was a man only. But in reality and in practice, Muslims value Muhammad's words far more than the words of Allah in the Quran. That's why Islam of today is totally based on hadiths, that is sayings, instructions, and words, every movements of the Prophet. And you will find hardly any connection with the Quran. Muhammad is given such a character in hadiths, and there are so many miracles claimed in the hadiths which you will hardly find in the Quran. Various Islamic sources claim that Muhammad performed several miracles, He had features which included, like Muhammad didn't have a shadow, and he could see 360 degrees around him. He performed several miracles. The Quran hardly mentions any miracle performed by Muhammad. It is not clear in the Quran that Muhammad traveled on a half horse, half human animal called Burak. It is not also clear that Muhammad himself split the moon in two. Muhammad was tormented by the people of other faiths for not performing any miracle. Quran also mentions Muhammad as just an ordinary man, like all other prophets, who was not an angel and who was simply human, like a human, ordinary human being who would eat, sleep, drink, have food. For example, if you refer to chapter 18 verse 110, chapter 3 verse 144, chapter 21 verse 7 to 8, chapter 17 verses 94 and 95, chapter 17 verse 90 to 93, then chapter 33 verse 21, all these verses clarify that Muhammad was nothing more than a human being. But in reality, from the hadiths and from several Islamic sources, it is clear that even from the time of Muhammad until now, in practice, Muslims overwhelmingly believe Muhammad was more than a human being, and they, in practice, have made Muhammad a demigod.